Ruffy's gonna fight Benoit Saint Denis in Paris, my guy. Bonjour. Bonjour, mes amis. Moi, bonjour. Croissant? Would you like a croissant? Look at him slurp, dude. He's slurping. Ouch. Did you hear that?
Bonjour.
Bonjour. Hallelujah, everybody. Hallelujah. Hallelujah. Welcome to the DynamiteGizmo Podcast, everyone. Episode 261. I'm still trying to figure out why my camera lags such a fucking mess. Why is it so fucking laggy? I have yet to figure it out, but anyway, here's today's card. It's tradition around here to show you the card, but it's not tradition to show you what's on the card, but you'll find out anyway because we'll talk about it. How many more times am I going to say that? I don't use the cards anymore. I kind of miss them, but I don't need them. They're unnecessary, but I still have to say that dumb sentence every fucking time.
I don't think that's actually Ian's son, but I don't like Eminem.
Oh, Jack Della Maddalena.
Shut your fucking mouth, you...
Shut your fucking mouth. Shut your fucking mouth. Today's topic of discussion for the UFC, because you know we only talk about UFC shit around here, is backup fighters. We're going to be talking about all kinds of everything that involves what it takes, why it's necessary about backup fighters. What's going on with the backup fighters? Why are they backing up like a big dump truck?
You guys got any bags of bird ham in here?
I haven't watched Dynamic Banter, and I can't even tell you how long.
Jackpot.
That's what these sound bites are from. Even this one here. And this one. And this one. They're all from Dynamic Banter. I used to love it. I've evolved. If you watch this podcast from episode 1 all the way to episode now, I've evolved. I don't like how laggy it is. It's kind of irritating my nipples. There's got to be a way I can figure out. I'll have to do it after the podcast is over. I already started it. You're going to have to sit through the lag. My apologies. What if I do this? Hold on. Does that help at all? That's a little better. Maybe? I don't fucking know, dude. Why does it do that? I don't know. Let's just fucking get started. Let's just jump right into this fucking Garboski. Huh? Let's just jump right into this Garspagooshk. Why? Why? Why being a backup fighter is so important? I want to start off with that. When it comes to the UFC, there's always backup fighters. Always, every single time. But why is it so important? Tom Aspinall was the backup fighter for John Jones versus Stipe Miocic. Ian Gary served as the backup fighter for UFC 315, Muhammad versus Della Maddalena. Arman Sarukian was the backup fighter for Topuria versus Oliveira. And now, we just saw that Caio Borralho was named the backup for Duplessis versus Chimaev. Or so he claims that, anyway. And Yuri Prohaska is listed as the backup fighter for Ankalaev versus Pereira coming up. And Caio even made a hilarious sketch to announce it, which we're going to watch together right fucking now, dude. Oh.
Chapter. Not me. Count on me, bro. I see you in Chicago. Let's go! 1, 2, 3,
Huh? You see? Apparently, according to Caio, he is the official backup. All right? We thought it was going to be Imavov, but now I guess it is Caio. I don't know, though. That's just what he claims. Now, if you're watching from outside the UFC bubble, the term backup fighter might not sound that appealing. It kind of gives afterthought energy, like you're the emergency contact, not the star of the show, which is true to an extent. But in the UFC, being named the official backup fighter is a massive honor. And in some cases, it can literally change your life overnight. You see, in boxing, this concept barely exists. When two boxers sign a contract, they train, they show up, and they fight, cancellations are rare. But in MMA, that's a whole different story. Between the wrestling, the jiu-jitsu, the striking, the kicks, the submissions, the arm bars, the slams, all of it, injuries in camp are very common. So from the UFC's perspective, whether it's Dana White or Hunter Campbell or the matchmakers, an injury to a main event fighter is an absolute nightmare. It risks ruining the whole card, you disappoint fans, you lose ticket revenue, you wreck pay-per-view sales, and piss off venue partners. That's why the role of a backup fighter is no small deal. It's actually insurance for the entire event, and it's so necessary because it's very, very often that events get canceled because of injuries, and they need a backup fighter. But here's what makes it even more intense. Being a backup fighter means going through a full training camp, doing the weight cut, traveling, and being ready for a full fight, all while knowing there's a good chance you don't fight and might not even get paid your full purse. You've got to be mentally locked in, physically prepared, and still accept that you might just be shadowboxing in the locker room while the main event is happening. And not just anyone gets this call, by the way. The UFC doesn't just grab the next guy in line. They want someone dangerous, someone marketable, someone the fans are going to go nuts for if they have to step in. For the most part, I mean, we saw that Money Moicano had to step in to the main event at the beginning of this year when Arman Tsarukyan couldn't get the fuck in there. But that's why Tom Aspinall was a perfect backup for Jones versus Miocic. And let's be honest here, people. A lot of people, including myself, were hoping Stipe would just fall out just to see the Jones versus Aspinall fight that we've all so desperately wanted. But we'll never get it now. But we've seen plenty of short notice chaos in the UFC. Okay, remember UFC 303 just last year? 4 hours before the co-main event, Ortega dropped out because he was sick or some shit. I can't remember. And Dan Ige stepped in on 4 hours' notice to fight Diego Lopez. That's not even a backup fighter scenario. That's just a Wild West fucking MMA situation. But it shows how important it is to have someone already there, already in fight shape. Even Leon Edwards made it known at UFC 286 that he was ready to step in if something happened between Usman and Covington. And more recently, Kamaru Usman stepped in at UFC 294 when Paulo Costa pulled out last minute against Chimaev. He didn't win that fight, but the fact that a former champ was willing to step in with no camp shows the kind of chaos MMA breeds and why backup fighters matter. Now back to Caio Borralho. He's already scheduled to fight Nasruddin Imavov on September 6th in Paris. A fight that will decide the next title challenger. And by the way, at the beginning of this episode, you saw Mauricio Ruffy's on that card too. against Benoit Saint-Denis. That's gonna be a sick matchup, dude. Anyway, back to this. But now Caio is flying to UFC 319 in Chicago on August 16th, just 3 weeks before his Paris fight, to be the official backup for Du Plessis versus Chimaev. If something happens to either Dricus or Khamzat, Caio's stepping in. And if he wins, he would be the first fighting nerd to win UFC gold. But if UFC 319 goes as planned, he fights Imavov, and then, assuming he wins again, he'll likely challenge for the title sometime in early 2026. But you see how fast the timeline could change out of nowhere. And the funny thing is, Imavov is ranked number 1 in the division after beating Adesanya. You'd assume he'd be the backup. And from what we have heard, he was supposed to be. Until he reportedly refused to fight Caio at International Fight Week. And now Caio, ranked number 6, is getting both the Paris main event and the backup spot at UFC 13. So sometimes it's not about who's next on paper. It's about who's available, who's willing, and who's making the biggest noise. Okay? Very typical scenario for the UFC. And just like Ian Gary, Caio Borralho, he's speaking it into existence for months, manifesting it, pushing for it, and eventually got named the backup. Just like Ian Gary was for UFC 315. It's not just skill, it's timing, it's momentum, it's being vocal at the right time. That's what makes this role so wild. There's no guarantee you'll even fight, but if you do and if you win, that one opportunity can catapult you into fucking stardom, dude. So next time you see a fighter post that they're the backup, don't just brush it off. They're not just in case. They're one twist of fate away from everything changing. Okay? When you see someone signed up as the backup fighter, especially for a main event, a title main event, anything could happen, literally right up till the last second. Look at the Aaron Blanchfield card. They got all the way to the main event. They were doing the walkouts, and they had to cancel the event because I don't remember if it was Blanchfield or her opponent, one of them. I didn't watch the card. It was the only card I haven't watched this year because it was so shit. But she didn't come out because she fainted. Anything can happen. Literally right up until the last second. So you have to you have to be ready for that. So when someone's the backup, you're like, okay, there's a very good chance that this could be the person who's fighting for the title. Now let me throw some questions your way. What do you guys think? Should backup fighters always get a flat rate pay for showing up, even if they don't end up fighting? And if you were Dana, would you go with the most technically sound fighter or the one with the biggest fan buzz as your backup? Let me know in the comments below, you fucking animal. Give it to me.
And I don't like Eminem.
Shut your fucking mouth, you'll do nothing.
We're going to move on to the next topic of discussion. We're going to keep it in the realm of the backup theme. Somewhat. Not really. Kind of. Don't tell me what to do, Gregory. This upcoming weekend, Vegas 109, Steve Erceg is set to return. Or is it next weekend? No, it's next weekend. And originally, he was supposed to co-main event the card against Alex Perez, a formal title challenger. But unfortunately, Perez had to withdraw, and now Erceg finds himself facing Ode Osborne instead. And while Osborne isn't ranked in the flyweight division, this might actually be exactly what Erceg needs, a reset. Let me explain, okay? Let's talk about Steve Erceg in case you don't even know who this fucker is. Before stepping into the UFC spotlight, Erceg was quietly dominating over in Eternal MMA, one of Australia's top regional promotions that also helped launch names like Jack Della Maddalena. Erceg joined Eternal in 2019, and after winning 3 straight wins, he earned a flyweight title shot in 2020 against Shannon Ross, the same Ross who would later appear on Dana White's Contender Series. Erceg choked him out with a rear naked choke with just 2 seconds left in the first round. He then moved up to bantamweight in 2021 to fight Cody Haddon, earning a unanimous decision win, before returning later that year to defend his Eternal flyweight title against Paul Loga, finishing that one via mounted guillotine choke in round 1. Paul Loga. That sounds very similar to Logan Paul. Anyway, but here's where things get a little strange, I guess. Between 2021 and 2023, Erceg was supposed to compete on the Dana White Contender Series. But due to repeated visa issues, the fights kept falling through. In the meantime, to stay active, he returned to Eternal MMA for one more non-title bout, which he again won via first round rear naked choke. He never made it to the Contender Series, but it didn't matter because in June of 2023, the UFC just straight up signed him and gave him a debut fight against David Dvorak, not to be confused with David, what's his name? Can't remember. A tough veteran with a solid UFC record. Anyway, Erceg beat him via unanimous decision and earned a Performance of the Night bonus. Then in November, I got a message. Then in November, he fought Alessandro Costa and earned another decision win. But the big breakout came in March 2024 when he knocked out Matt Schnell with a clean right hand that earned him yet another Performance of the Night bonus. That win bumped him up to rank number 10 in the rankings, just 3 fights into his UFC career. Now, if you've listened to my earlier segment on the podcast that we just talked about when it comes to backup fighters and why short notice opportunities matter, this is a textbook example. Because right after the Schnell KO, the UFC needed someone fast. Alexandre Pantoja was set to defend his title against Muhammad Makayev, who has since been dismissed from the UFC. But Makayev turned it down, citing Ramadan and needed a longer camp to recover from Ramadan. Other top names like Brandon Moreno and Brandon Royval were unavailable or had just lost to Pantoja. So enter Steve Erceg. He said yes immediately. He was already in shape, he was ranked, he had buzz, and the division was shallow. It was a risk, but the kind the UFC loves. An underdog story with a clean narrative, a fresh face, a recent finish, and no baggage. And despite the fact that Erceg lost the fight against Pantoja, he gave Pantoja one of the toughest title defenses of his career. He arguably won the final round and earned the champ's respect. Pantoja even said afterward that Erceg is going to be a problem in the division. But since that night, things haven't really gone Erceg's way. He followed the Pantoja fight with a close but clear decision loss to Kai Kara France. It was not a close fight. I am remembering this now. It was a first round KO by Kai Kara France. And then, again, dropped a decision to Brandon Moreno earlier this year, putting him on a 3-fight losing streak. Now, to be clear, those are 3 of the best fighters in the division. This isn't a guy washed by nobodies, but it does show that after a meteoric rise, The road at the top is rougher than most expect. Which brings us back to Ode Osbourne. Sure, he's not ranked, but he's dangerous. A lot of action, a lot of aggression. He can be reckless, but he can also catch you slipping. Erceg needs to be careful. That said, if he can get a clean, dominant win here, it might just relight that fire and get him back on track toward the title conversation. Or at least back in the win column, which is exactly what Erceg needs right now. And I think he's going to take Ode no problem. Okay? Especially since he's ranked number 10 right now. Ode's not even ranked, which really doesn't really matter that much. But Erceg needs this win, dude. He can't keep losing. I mean, he can, but how many more? How many more can he lose before he's shit-canned? I was really hoping that Erceg was going to win the title fight against Pantoja when I watched it. I voted for him, and it was close, dude. I thought he was going to take it. Could you imagine having Steve Erceg as a fucking champion? That shit would be crazy, dude. That shit would be off the fucking charts crazy. But then he probably would have had that fight against Kai Kara-France, champion, as a champion, and he probably would have lost to Kai Kara-France. But who knows? But as it sits right now, I'm okay with I'm more than okay with Pantoja being the champ. I think Pantoja's a great flyweight champ. And I hope he stays. Although Joshua Van would be great too. Either way, I'd be happy either way. It'd be nice to see Pantoja win to keep his fucking record going and maybe eventually beat or get equal to Demetrius Johnson's record. Or have Joshua Van win and be the youngest UFC... Would he be the youngest UFC champion? I don't know. Is he older than what John Jones was when he got the belt? I don't even know. But then we still have Raul Rosas Jr. He's still young, and he's flying up the bantamweight division. And I know he has a fight soon against a ranked opponent. He hasn't said who it is yet, but I believe he said it's within the top 10. So if he can get in the top 10, dude, he's just like 2 or 3 fights away from fighting for a title. And he will for sure be the youngest UFC champion. I would love to see Raul. But the thing is, Raul has to go up against Merab. Mind you, as long as Merab is still the champion by the time Raul gets up there. Who knows? I don't think Corey Sandhagen is going to win against Merab. But it might happen. Who knows if anyone's ever going to beat Merab? Who knows? But anyway, let me throw some questions your way about this segment. Do you think Steve Erceg was rushed too quickly to the top? Or did he prove he belonged with the elite? And if Erceg loses to Osbourne, is the hype train done? Do you think someone like Erceg, with his resume, still has another title run in him? Or is it going to take a while yet? Let me know in the comments. I need to know your answers, motherfucker. And we have one final segment of the day. And then I'm going to eat some sparchetti and meat sauce.
And I don't like Eminem.
Actually, do I have that soundbite? Do I not have that soundbite? I did at one point. Oh, I don't think I have it anymore.
Never offer me tobacco again.
I did not shit my pants.
I don't have it.
I don't wipe my bum.
Do you feel that?
This fucking reeks, man.
Are you going to finish that croissant?
Hey.
Croissant?
I said croissant at the beginning of this video, did I not?
He can't keep getting away with it. He can't keep getting away with it.
Chinese. Okay. Final segment. This is not the old DGP. This is the new DGP. We don't fuck around here. We keep the train rolling. Keep the wheels greased. I need to talk about RDR and DDP. Dricus du Plessis and Reinier de Ridder. Now this is something I brought up before. But with the fight approaching quickly, and since we're already on the topic of backup fighters, it's worth getting into again. As much as the Dricus du Plessis versus Khamzat Chimaev matchup is one of the most anticipated fights of the year, and one that fans around the world are eagerly looking forward to, there's still one major factor we need to consider before we get too excited. That factor is Khamzat himself. And more specifically, his ability, or should I say inability, to actually show up for main events. So what do I mean by that? Well, let's take a look at his UFC career. Khamzat has had 8 fights in the UFC so far and has won every single one. That's impressive. But what's equally important is the fact that there have been 5 other occasions where he was scheduled to fight, and all of those fell through, and each of them were main events. Let's go back to December of 2020. Khamzat was scheduled to headline a card against Leon Edwards, but Edwards tested positive for COVID-19. And the event was canceled. Okay, fair enough. All right, Leon got COVID. Okay, have to cancel, whatever. The fight was then rebooked for January of 2021. This time, it was Khamzat who caught COVID. He hadn't recovered in time and had to pull out. The UFC rescheduled the bout once again for March of 2021. But Khamzat was still dealing with lingering effects of the illness, so once again the event was scrapped. Okay. Now, to be fair, none of that was really Khamzat's fault or Leon's fault. The illness is an illness. You can't really control that. He was seriously affected by COVID, and it kept him out of action for months. So yes, we gave him the benefit of the doubt for that. After recovering, he came back and fought 3 more times between 2021 and 2022, winning all of them dominantly. Then came a major moment in UFC history. Nate Diaz versus Khamzat Chimaev, scheduled to headline UFC 279, a main event, by the way, and it was a numbered card, a main event on a main numbered pay-per-view. And here's what made it so unusual. There was no title on the line. These were just 2 big names headlining a pay-per-view. Why? Because Nate Diaz was entering the final fight of his UFC contract, and the UFC wanted to match him up against a surging monster. Someone who could potentially derail his exit and elevate themselves by beating a legend. And at the time, Khamzat was an undefeated phenomenon, coming off a series of dominant wins and considered one of the most exciting prospects in years. Despite no belt being at stake, the fight was promoted as a spectacle, a sort of passing of the torch moment if Chimaev could take out the seasoned veteran that was Nathan Diaz. And of course, Nate Diaz's name value alone guaranteed pay-per-view buys. He's a star. He brings eyes to any card that he's on. But guess what? This time, Khamzat was to blame. At the weigh-ins, Khamzat missed weight by 7.5 pounds, a massive miss for a 170-pound bout. The UFC had to scramble at the last minute to reshuffle the entire main event. Luckily, Tony Ferguson stepped in, and Diaz ended up fighting him instead. It was and disappointing chaos. Then, in June of last year, Khamzat had yet another opportunity to headline a major event, this time against Robert Whittaker, in the main event of the Riyadh season card in Saudi Arabia. And once again, the main event didn't happen. Khamzat reportedly developed a severe illness, and the UFC had to replace him with Ikram Aliskerov. He eventually did face Whittaker later that year at UFC 308 in October, but that fight was not a main event. So let's tally this up. Every single time Khamzat Chimaev has been booked to headline a UFC main event, it's fallen apart. He is currently 0 for 5 on actually making it to the main event spotlight. Whether it's due to illness, weight issues, or unforeseen circumstances, he cannot make a main event. And that brings us to today. With Dricus versus Khamzat on the horizon, we are once again holding our breath. Will Khamzat make it to fight night? Will he make weight, or will something else go wrong? Now let's imagine for a moment that he cannot fight. There's been an unofficial rumor, which we did talk about, that Caio himself may be stepping in as the backup fighter. But what if that doesn't happen? What if someone else actually steps up? What if it's RDR? Okay, just think about it. What if? All right, and let's just play complete hypothetical. All right, let's say Caio is actually the backup, because it isn't actually official, but let's say he is, okay? We're going to assume he's telling the truth, okay? But push it aside and let's just do a hypothetical situation. What if it was RDR? What if RDR was the one? RDR just picked up his 4th dominant win in the UFC at middleweight and has now jumped 8 spots in the ranking, landing him at the number 5 position, ahead of Caio. So what if the UFC gave him the shot? It would make a lot of sense. It would sell. And honestly, it would be one of the goofiest, most unpredictable matchups we've ever seen. And most exciting. Okay, both of these fighters, RDR and DDP, are known for their complete unorthodox, offbeat, borderline chaotic styles. They fight like nobody else. Even Tom Aspinall has said that Dricus is his favorite fighter to watch simply because he has no idea what he's going to do next.
It's a good, yeah, but mate, I love his style though, you know. Yeah. I think he is the most interesting guy to watch in the UFC because I watch him and it just doesn't make sense for me. Yeah. I can't see what he's doing. He'll do like a head kick into like a low single. You're just like, what? But what I really like what you do is like, you throw that.
You see, Dricus du Plessis is Tom Aspinall's favorite fighter, and he said it time and time again. And RDR is exactly the same way in terms of goofy styles. It's like watching 2 Looney Tunes characters scramble in a cartoon dust cloud. As seeing them both in there together it'd be pure madness, chaotic brilliance, an absolute must-see entertainment. But beyond the style matchup, here's something even more interesting. Both of these guys are massive for middleweight. The division's weight cap is 185 pounds, but Dricus walks around anywhere between 224 to 231 pounds. That means he's cut nearly 50 pounds to make weight. And RDR, before entering the UFC, he was simultaneously the middleweight and the light heavyweight champion in one championship. He even went on to face an interim heavyweight title holder. These two are huge for the division. And it begs the question, is that size advantage a major factor in determining their dominance in the middleweight division? Because here's the kicker. Neither of them have lost in the UFC. Dricus is a perfect 9-0, and RDR is sitting at 4-0. A fight between them wouldn't just be unpredictable, it would answer some real questions about the future of the division. It would test size, chaos, cardio, adaptability, and as much as I would love to see Dricus face Caio, and I really hope that fight does happen eventually, DDP versus RDR would fucking feed nations, dude. That shit would be so crispy, clean, creamy, dude. I would love to see that shit. God, that would be such a good fight. And I imagine it's going to happen soon regardless of whatever happens after 319. I think what's going to happen is, okay, if Khamzat and DDP does actually happen, if Khamzat actually does make weight, and if he actually shows up and they fight and DDP wins, I think the winner between Caio and Imavov will then fight for the middleweight title, and then whoever wins that, then we'll see RDR show up and fight whoever has the belt at that point, which will probably still be DDP, but who knows? It might be like everyone's, this DDP and Khamzat matchup, it's very, very fucking hard to determine any way this could go. Because Khamzat could win. He very well could win. It's not like Khamzat is just going to get smoked by DDP. He could fucking win. And I wouldn't be disappointed if he did, because I love Khamzat. And at the beginning of this year, when I made my predictions of who would have the belt, he was who I said was going to get the middleweight title. And I've been wrong so far about every single prediction I made. I predicted that Diego would have the title, but at that time we didn't know he was even going to fight for the title. And yada yada. I went over this before. But I think even if DDP loses against Khamzat, I think there will still be an RDR versus DDP fight in the future, which would be so sick. That'd be so sick to see, dude. But anyway, let me ask you a few questions about this topic. Do you think Khamzat Chimaev will actually make the Dricus fight this time based off of his entire UFC career and never showing up to a main event after having the opportunity 5 times? And if Khamzat pulls out, who would you rather see step in, Caio Borralho or RDR? And you know what, folks? That's all I got for you. I am going to eat some sparchetti and meat sauce. And I am going to start the outro music. I live in Canada, and it is hot as balls today. Maybe not compared to you guys in Texas or California. You guys are like, you want to talk about heat? Come down here. But for here, it's not usually this hot, and it's quite hot. 30 degrees Celsius. I don't know what that is in Fahrenheit, but you can calculate it yourself. Remember, like, comment, subscribe, hit the bell, do all that stuff. Please, I'm begging you. Bye.